Hello and welcome to Pro Tips with Studio Pros. Today we're going to talk about dynamics. Some of you may know this, but dynamics is the relative loudness with which music is played. Back in the days where we didn't have recordings, composers had to notate how loud certain sections were played. They couldn't rely on listening to the song, so everything had to be written down. Back then, everyone knew all the terms. And these terms are actually still used in music all the time, especially in orchestral music. The terms are all in Italian, and I'm going to go from most quiet to most loud. And since Italian is my first language, I'm going to obnoxiously pronounce them in Italian. So we have pianissimo, piano, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, forte, and fortissimo. Basically, these are just very soft, soft, medium soft, medium loud, loud, and very loud. These are the basic static dynamics. If you see it in the music, it means that entire part, until otherwise noted, is going to be at that loudness. But you also have dynamics that are moving. So you have crescendo, which means growing. So that means getting louder. Side note, in English, we call it a piano, but in Italian, it's called a pianoforte. And this is because you could play it quiet or you could play it loud if you pressed harder. This was in direct contrast with the clavichord, which could not produce any varying dynamics. It was just a single dynamic all the time. The thing that's funny about loudness in today's day and age is that because of the way professional recording is done with compression and limiting, you don't have much of a decibel level difference between loud and soft. However, we still want a contrast between loud and soft. So the trick is not to think of it as loudness, but to think of it as intensity. This is what's really important. Back in the orchestral days, if you played really loud, it sounded really loud. And if you played really soft, it sounded really soft. Now we record a sound and we can later change how loud or how soft it is. And then furthermore, we can compress it to make it even less obvious how loud it was played. And that's why it's our responsibility to not necessarily play louder or sing louder, but to sing with more intensity in the parts that we want. When the music is softer, play with a subtlety. This is what's going to make a song sound much more authentic. If you go in and play with the same intensity throughout the entire song, it may not have as much of an emotional impact as if you vary things and let the story, lyrics, and musicality dictate where you're going to be stronger and where you're going to be more subtle. So to illustrate this, I'm going to play a quick part on the piano. At first, I'm going to keep things totally neutral, try to introduce no dynamics at all. Now I'm going to try to grow with it a little bit and let the music dictate where I should be playing a little stronger and where I should be playing a little softer and more delicate. That's a really simple example, and it becomes even more obvious where you should be growing things when you have lyrics attached to it. The lyrics should really be dictating where you apply strength and where you apply subtlety. If your lyrics say, "I'm screaming at the top of my lungs from a mountaintop how much I need you now," your intensity should probably be very high. Whereas if your lyric is, "and I never knew how much I missed you," then that could be much softer because you're in a more vulnerable state, an unsure, an unstable state. So it's important to remember, even when you're recording your own music, any instrument or voice that you record, if you want it to be soft, if you want it to be quiet, play it with that kind of emotion. Don't rely on just turning down the volume later in the mix because that's not going to have the same effect. So you do not have to learn the Italian words for all the different dynamic levels in music, but you should keep in mind what role loudness and, more importantly, intensity play in the emotional delivery of your song. Varying the dynamics following the intended meaning of your lyrics is going to make your song come to life. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Pro Tips with Studio Pros. Please like and subscribe. Leave any comments in the comment section below. Please check out all these services that we provide at studiopros.com. Go out there and make some music.